So welcome to the Shaping the Industry of Tomorrow event as part of the Digital Manufacturing Week 2020. A very warm welcome to the Liverpool City region, to those of you that are tuning in from overseas. I'd like to very briefly introduce you to Nigel Jones from the Department of International Trade, who's going to do a very quick sort of scene setting around what this event's all about, and then he'll hand back to me and I'll tell you a bit more, and then we'll get into what you've really come to hear about, which is the great lineup of speakers that we have. Over to you, Nigel.
Lovely, thank you, Simon. Appreciate your time, everybody, today. So as Simon says, this is very much part of Digital Manufacturing Week 2020, and there'll be people here live listening to us now on a November morning in Liverpool, which is my hometown. But other people across the whole world, so you maybe even listen to this as a recording. So hello, wherever and whenever you are, including my colleagues at DIT, at the Department for International Trade. You may be a consulate somewhere else across the globe, and you may be a company that knows them, an inward investor, as we call them, looking into this part of the world to see what the opportunities are. I'm Nigel Jones, and I'm a sector specialist for the tech sector here. So I'm going to run through a couple of slides now. So Danielle, if you could stick a couple of these ones up for me, the first one. We go to the lovely. So the whole sort of rationale for this, really, as Simon sort of said, is to give you a sense of a whole list of opportunities that we have here. So I lead on the tech sector. So I describe this as very much a horizontal one, which cross-cuts a whole host of other verticals. And we'll hear from a number of representatives on these industries today that have found a home across the Liverpool City region, either because they've always been here or they've chosen to come here from somewhere else across the UK or somewhere else across the world. So we're keen to understand you as a tech business, how you could maybe take part in this, what the ecosystem means to you, what the fit could be for you, the commercial opportunities, the chance to collaborate. And we're trying to, if you like, give you a sense of an opportunity here for a region, the Northern Powerhouse region where Liverpool sits, of 15 million people. There's around 1 million businesses here as well, and how we can help you to be successful. Next slide, please. So the rationale for this, and Digital Manufacturing Week is a national event. It's not a Northern event, it's not a Liverpool event, it's a national event that just happens to take place. Businesses you'll be hearing from today are all world class in all that they do, and we're keen to bring other businesses in from wherever across the world, again, to be world class, to add to what we do. We're very much looking out from the Liverpool City region today, and you'll get a real sense of that over the next, I guess, hour or so. Next slide, please. So for my particular sector, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but I want the rationale and the logic to underpin this, to say the fact that across those different verticals, there's a whole host of areas of tech. And don't forget, this is part of Digital Manufacturing Week. So the digital element of this, if you are a digital business, a tech business with a different product or solution, maybe from somewhere else in the world looking into it, there are lots of ticks. There are lots of opportunities. Businesses here want to be world class in these areas, and we want to hear from you. So please do ask questions throughout the day today if you get an opportunity to do so. If you don't, please follow up with us. Simon, who's led it, will give us a summary at the end with myself about how you can get in contact if your question can't be asked. And we'll finally sign off to say that if you are based at somewhere else across the world, please do get in contact with your local British embassy or consulate. There'll be a DIT representative there to help you if this is something you want to move forward with. So that's the end of my session. I think we may have some contact details on the next slide, Daniel. Yes, if you need to get hold of me, please do so. Phone numbers. If you want to drop me a LinkedIn request, that's fine. Please say it's in relation to Digital Manufacturing Week, because otherwise I won't know you. But I'm keen to sort of continue that dialogue. So yeah, that's just to set the scene. Thank you for being part and parcel of this. I look forward to speaking to you again at the end. So Simon, that's back to you.
Great, thanks, Nigel. It's important from an overseas investor's point of view to see that the Liverpool City region sits in that sort of wider Northern Powerhouse region. But just in terms of Liverpool City region, I'm head of advanced manufacturing at Growth Platform, the Liverpool City region growth company. And for those of you that don't know, Liverpool City region, it's 1.5 million people. It's a £32 billion economy, so not an insignificant part of the UK, the UK business base. Interestingly, we've seen $1 billion of growth in that economy in the last 10 years. So, it is very much a growing region, a dynamic region, and an exciting region. In terms of manufacturing, manufacturing contributes 4.3 billion of gross value added to that wider city region economy. employing around about 50,000 people across 3,000 businesses. So, manufacturing and advanced manufacturing is a big part of our economy and an important part of our economy, and more pertinently, a growing part of our economy. So why are we here? Why does Digital Manufacturing Week take place in the Publicity region every year? Obviously, this year's a virtual event, but has a very strong Publicity region flavour. Even so why is it here? Well, in 2016, we were the first region in the UK to look at the deployment of industrial digital technologies in manufacturing through a programme that we had called LCR 4.0, Liverpool City Region 4.0, which predated the government's Made Smarter report and actually the government's Made Smarter programme. What does that mean? Why is that important? Well, what it means is that there's a series of assets, of which some of them will be articulated later. The Virtual Engineering Centre, STFC Hartree, Sensor City, the 2 universities, the Manufacturing Technology Centre. So there's a series of assets that are here that help companies adopt digital technologies into their businesses. What that means is that there's a rich ecosystem of companies. Some of them you're going to hear from today. A rich ecosystem of sort of circa 350 companies that all work in that industrial digitization type space, and we are keen to grow that number and grow that opportunity. There's also some very large companies here. I mean, Unilever you're going to hear from this morning, but there's also Jaguar Land Rover, Alstom, Pilkington. There's a whole suite. AstraZeneca. There's a whole suite of sort of larger manufacturers as well. So what I'm trying to say to you is, and just summing up, is it's a great place in terms of its scale. It's a great place in terms of its dynamism. It's a great place in terms of that ecosystem of businesses and those large primes all working in a very sort of central geography in the UK, bisected by 5 major motorways, rail links direct to London, 2 international airports and an international port. So what I'm saying is, it is a great place around industrial digitization more broadly, which is what we're going to talk about this morning. But you don't want to hear from me. That's kind of the elevator pitch. What you're really interested to hear from is actual real live examples of where you and your companies and people in your network and supply chain can interact with the Liverpool City region. So I'm delighted to split this whole session into 2. The first bit, we're going to talk about the role of digitization in the circular economy, really important part of of the whole business strata across the world. And then we're going to move on to the role of digitization into sort of med tech and vaccine manufacturing. Again, really, really topical. So we're going to have the presentations from the speakers. And then if you've got any questions, please put them into the chat function. Now, there's quite a lot of you online, so we'll do our very, very best to try and get through any questions. But please just put them into the chat function, and I and my colleague Hannah will moderate them later on. Okay, brilliant. So with no further ado, I'd like to move straight into the first session, which digitization and the circular economy, and I'm delighted to introduce you to Darren Regeb from the CPI and Dr. Colin Kerr from Unilever, who are really going to talk through a very, very exciting opportunity. So over to you, Darren.
Thanks, Simon. Hi, everybody. Just to give you an overview of our talk today, this is going to be a double act from myself and Colin Kerr from Unilever. I'm going to start with a quick introduction on CPI and our high-level view of the world of digitalisation and circular economy and how we see the world. Colin's going to give you a deep dive on Unilever's perspective and some of the activities they're doing in this space. We'll then revert to myself, where I'll give you a few more case studies of CPI activity, but close on a talk about something that Unilever and CPI are working on together, which is to develop a national packaging innovation centre and a broader packaging cluster within the Liverpool City region. Next slide, please, Danielle. Thanks. Yeah, so CPI is an innovation centre. We employ about 450 people. We're predominantly based in the northeast of England. We're just about to create a centre in Scotland. We're going to be creating a centre in Liverpool soon as well, because we know it's the place to be. And our vision is to create a healthier society, a cleaner environment and a vibrant UK economy. And we do that by ensuring every great invention gets the best opportunity to become a successfully marketed product. So the circular economy, cleaner environment, healthier environment, vibrant economy is core to what we do. Next slide, please. We're part of the UK's Catapult networks. This is a network of leading innovation centres. We sit within an organisation called the High Value Manufacturing Catapult. So we're all really set up and geared to stimulate innovation-led growth for the good of the UK industry. CPI's main market focus is around it's broad. It's pharmaceuticals, healthcare, medtech, materials, FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods, packaging. We tend to operate at an interface between chemistry, materials, biotech, electronics, but we work closely with a lot of our partners as well elsewhere in the high value manufacturing catapult. So we see a lot of perspectives from automotive to aerospace, composites. So next slide, please. I just wanted to give a quick overview of how we see the circular economy and digitalization. And intuitively, you know, when I first approached this area, I thought, what's the connection? But over the years, we've learned that actually the two are intimately connected. And I'd go as far as to say you can't deliver the circular economy properly without digitalization, digital tools. And this is because the circular economy, to do it properly, it requires innovation at a systems level. And to do that, you need the right tools, and digitalization provides you the tools to innovate at a systems level. So we all approach this slightly differently, but the systems we're talking about could be production, they could be logistics, they could be the design and R&D functions, and all of those systems need optimizing, or they need the ability to be flexible and agile, or we need the ability to impact the model and model. We need the ability to model what impacts any changes to our system might be, and that could be relating to sustainability, it could be relating to material flows, it could be relating to the financial viability of a change. And digitalization ultimately gives you tools to access data, to create models or digital twins, and it provides you with feedback loops and levers you can pull to modify your system. So we're working a lot in the area of packaging at the moment and looking at how we make packaging more sustainable, and that is a complex systems product. So I'll go a bit more into the detail of the work we're doing in this area shortly, but at this point I'll hand over to Colin Kerr from Unilever.
Thank you, Darren, and good morning, good afternoon. My name's Colin Kerr. I'm based in Unilever. As Simon said, Unilever has a major presence within the Liverpool City region. We have a large manufacturing operation, and we also have our largest global R&D centre based there, which is where I sit. I'd like to take the opportunity in today's discussion here to be able to share with you, next slide please, Daniel, to share with you some of the work that we're doing within Unilever around how we're utilising digital tools to help us to be able to deliver on our overall circular agenda. So next slide please, Danielle. So Unilever has created a set of commitments. So I want to focus this conversation particularly in the world of packaging as a key part within the type of product development that we do within Unilever in creating innovations for consumers. And specifically within that, I'd also like to focus in on our plastics agenda in particular. Unilever has a set of commitments which we have made around our use of plastics, around how we will evolve to be able to use 100% recyclable packaging, how we will maximise our use of recycled plastic, how we will halve our use of virgin plastic, and how we will collect and process more plastic than we actually sell overall globally. Now, in order to do that, we want to explore and continue to innovate as much as we can, and I'd like to share with you our some of the processes that we've been able to use to help us to accelerate our agenda against this overall circular economy ambition. Next slide, please. Unilever has a framework that we use as we are developing new packaging solutions as part of our innovation programs to deliver new products for consumers around the world. And this involves everything from the beginning of the process, defining what exactly we want to do, right the way through until we actually are launching products on the marketplace. Now, increasingly, Unilever is looking to be able to convert some of those traditional physical activities into digital approaches. And we're doing that across all different aspects of that full journey during the development process. And it starts with data. It starts with helping our packaging engineers to capture the right data, to manage the right data, and to take the maximum value from that data. We're using that data to be able to create data-driven models to help us to be able to replace some of the physical activities that we do. And we're also using extensively simulation modeling, using finite element analysis in order to help us to be able to understand at a deeper level the implications of what we're doing and the opportunities. Now, all of these different digital tools are really all determined against trying to help us to determine the optimal technical solutions, to identify new solutions that we couldn't otherwise do, to be able to ensure that as we are developing those solutions, they are as robust from an engineering perspective as they need to be, to ensure that we are delivering the right quality of products consistently to our consumers around the world. And thirdly, we want to make sure that by using these tools, we are improving the efficiencies of our processes in terms of speed, in terms of overall efficiency, in terms of resource use and so on. So these tools are all things that we're working on within Unilever, and we're working with many external partners in order to help us to deliver to these. I'd like to share a couple of examples just to illustrate these for you today. So next slide, please, Danielle. And I'd like to start first with this example here. So Unilever makes a lot of bottles. We make large numbers of bottles all around the world, and we have developed sets of tools and modelling which are integrated in order to help us to be able to optimise the designs of our bottles, and indeed the weight and the amount of plastic that we have to use for our bottles. And the type of modelling that we do in this space starts with understanding the actual material, so having characterised the plastic resins that we're going to use. We would always use the 3D CAD geometry of the particular bottle that we are interested in exploring. And we have a set of let me call them specification targets, optimization aspects that we want to make sure are in place. So we have tools which will allow us to be able to model the parasin, so the tube that gets extruded when you're first producing an extrusion blow molded bottle, typically in high density polyethylene. The model will then allow us to be able to predict and model the actual blow molding of the bottle shape itself. And it will allow us to be able to then model the functional properties of that bottle as produced. And that model works in such a way that it will then iterate back in order to add material, take material away, evolve the wall thickness and the distribution of materials across the parasin and across the bottle in such a way that ultimately we're able to design the optimal parasin material flow and the optimum bottle weight and bottle thickness in order to achieve the specification that we desire. In this particular example around top load, but it can be a number of other parameters. On the slide, you'll see a couple of examples here where we've been able to use that sort of process in order to take significant levels of plastic out of our bottle designs. These two examples, around 10% of the bottle weight, which we would not have been able to do but by doing physical trials. And that translates to numbers of thousands of tons of plastic a year, which we're able to remove from our plastic footprint. Next slide, please, Danielle. The next example I wanted to share is how we are using digital tools to help us to innovate and to design optimal solutions. This particular example involves aerosols, specifically an actuator, so the component on the top of an aerosol that helps you to deliver the product as required. We have a series of tools that we use in order to help us to be able to optimize the design, to optimize the actual component itself and the manufacturing process. In this case, it's typically injection molding processes. We're typically using polypropylene as the base materials, although also other materials. These are also assembled materials. So as well as looking at the actual optimization of the manufacturing process of the injection molding, we are also then looking at the components themselves and how they can have the right optimal functionality through a series of different individual models, which will allow us to be able to interrogate and assess the different functional requirements of this particular design. And then we also have a set of digital tools which help us to be able to predict and assess the viability of the assembly process, the implications of applying the actuator onto the, in this case, an aluminium can on the packing line, the implications of the whole system as far as transportation is concerned, and the implications of it actually, the whole pack running down the packing line. And as a result of using these combinations of different tools, we are able to optimize the design solutions. And you can see on the chart here, in this particular case, a 32% reduction in the amount of plastic we required for that actuator design, and also a 25% reduction in the amount of aluminium required for the can. And at the same time as doing that, we are also ensuring that the actual functionality is optimized and the quality performance is there as necessary. Next chart, please, Danielle. Now, all of those aspects are associated with the design of the component itself, but we're also looking much more extensively across the whole extended supply chain and being able to develop digital tools to help us to interrogate a number of different aspects all the way along that flow. And that might start right up at the material, the raw material suppliers. So we have models that help us to predict models for materials, their characteristics, their potential suitability or otherwise for the applications we're interested in. We have models that help us to simulate the actual manufacturing processes for our different types of components. As I said before, we have models which help us to optimize the actual functionality of the designs, models to be able to predict the handleability on packing lines and in machine operations, models which help us to simulate the transportation of the packs and the robustness of the pack under those circumstances. Models that we're developing looking at e-commerce as another example where there are some very different sets of physical challenges that a pack has to survive as it goes through that sort of extended supply chain. And also models that help us to predict the consumer experience and how robustly the pack will perform and how well it will meet consumers' needs. So with that, I'd like to just finish and say that we are we're using a lot of these tools in order to help us to be able to optimize our designs, to be able to significantly positively impact the robustness of our solutions, but also how these solutions can help us to deliver our circular economy commitments. So with that, back to Darren. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. Next slide, please, Daniel. So just a couple more case studies from CPI, and then we'll talk about the National Packaging Innovation Centre. So I think one of the takeaways from Colin's presentation for me is when we think about economy, it's not always about just recycling. A lot of the time it can be about reducing our footprint in the first place. So here's a project we're working on at the moment in FMCG. We're looking at how you can delocalize design and production of products. In this case, it's a powder laundry detergent, and we're looking at using modeling and cloud computing and automation to create a platform where consumers or colleagues from around the world can design products, and then those products can be produced in smaller batches in fab labs around the world. So the idea here is that you can actually minimize your footprint by delivering products at a smaller but more bespoke level, and thus reducing waste. There's other benefits. You can get more innovative, fast designs faster to market, but there's a real waste reduction opportunity there. Next slide, please, Daniel. The pharmaceutical industry, we're working closely with AstraZeneca and GSK in this area. You can create smart tags which have sensors, we've got the capability to make those at a cost-effective volumes cost effectively, and this enables you to track and trace packaging as it goes through the supply chain. You can locate packaging so you can minimize losses. You can actually sense the conditions that the pack is under. So it's quite topical at the moment with a COVID-19 vaccine approach in the market, and it will the Pfizer vaccine will require cold chain storage. And at the moment, the industry, I was blown away when I heard this stat, but the industry loses $35 billion worth of materials just because of the excursions from the temperature that materials are supposed to be stored at. So there's a huge opportunity there to use digital technologies to minimize losses. Next slide, please. And just very quickly here, we can also embed smart technology and sensors into consumer products. This can enable the better track and trace to make the logistics more efficient for recycling, and there's also a potential to actually engage with consumers more. So a consumer can take their iPhone and use the NFC technology in there, hold it up against a pack, and get some interaction with brands or waste companies that might encourage consumer or sustainable behaviours. Next slide, please. So on to what we're doing in the northwest with Unilever and the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority. So we're looking to create a future packaging cluster. We want to create 20,000 sustainable high-value jobs over the next 20 years. And at the heart of that is the plan to create a national packaging innovation centre. Next slide, please. We've looked at the market and we think it's going to undergo a huge disruption over the next 10 years or so. Clean growth, minimising plastic waste, net zero, there's a huge challenge there and a huge opportunity. Empowering consumers, we see that consumers are going to increasingly still want more differentiated products, and we've talked a lot already about smart supply chains. So as we move away from just conventional physical stores and physical supply routes, we're going to see much more a blend with things like Amazon or Deliveroo, direct to consumer. So that's the opportunity we want to exploit. Next slide, please. This is our schematic of how we look at the market. It's not just the £800 billion worth of packaging that's sold around the world. The market opportunity is actually around the value created in the end products, reducing the cost of waste and hopefully turning those resources into value, and the chemicals and materials that go into packaging. So as we, the theme of this talk is about circular economy and digital technologies. We think those themes are really going to disrupt this value chain, and we see the opportunity to create a centre where we bring these parts of the value chain together and can collaborate and develop new innovations. At the heart of that schematic, we've got the suppliers of technologies, equipment, digital technology, R&D services. So that's the reason we're creating an innovation centre. Next slide, please. This is the last slide, Simon. Strategic themes and call to action. So these are our themes. This is what we're working on. Transformational manufacturing, sustainable packaging, recycling technologies, packaging for emerging channels, smart supply chains, and driving changes in consumer behaviour. We're working with all those companies that you can see below. We'd love to work with many more. The aim is to create the National Packaging Centre over the next year or so. Getting the bricks and mortar will be accelerated because we plan to position the centre next door to Unilever at the Port Sunlight facility in the region. In the short term, we're looking to get some fast track projects going to address some of these grand challenges that we've listed. So if anyone is interested in partnering with us and helping to get some projects going, or just wants to hear a bit more about the centre and the great capabilities in the region, please get in touch.
Fantastic. And 1 minute over Darren and Colin, which is absolutely excellent for such rich content that you've got there. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. I think, you know, overseas colleagues and you know, overseas investors, there is a whole plethora of opportunity there on the digital side, or other, you know, other parts of the you know, the discussion, you know, maybe around packaging, sort of plastics, chemicals, but you know, the focus of today is digital, but you know, I can see you know, a massive opportunity. So moving from the very, very large in Unilever, so thanks Darren and thanks Colin, that was great, but we'll come on to questions a bit later. Moving from the very, very large to the not so large, and moving to a company that's moved into the Liverpool City region, into Cytec Daresbury and the campus there, but who very, very much are in this whole circular economy digitisation piece. I'm delighted to introduce Niamh and Derek Allen from Iot Horizon. Over to you guys.
Thanks, Simon. So if we could go to slide 1, please, Danielle. So good morning. As Simon rightly said, my name's Niamh Allen. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director for Iot Horizon, and I'm also joined by Derek today. So Derek wave. So we're going to do a little bit of a double act today, similar to Darren and Colin. So Derek actually set up the company 3 years ago on Sunday. So as an SME, we are thrilled to bits to have just reached our 3rd birthday. From our first £35 order to where we are today is just unbelievable. So we are an Internet of Things and digital transformation specialist. So we're based at Cytec Daresbury. We're lab side, and it's just a brilliant ecosystem. So we provide end-to-end solutions. So that could be for things like asset tracking, contact tracing and social distancing, which we've seen a massive uplift recently with COVID, preventative maintenance solutions, or even building a bespoke sensor. But we also provide professional services. So that's taking a client through a digital transformation process. So taking them from an idea or challenge right through to a rapid prototype. Now, when we got approached about the role of digitisation in the circular economy, it really did pique our interest, because we believe that tech can be an enabler and catalyst for achieving a sustainable circular economy. So, as on my slide, circular is about moving away from a consumptive model to a sustainable model. So as we see in energy, moving away from coal-fired power stations to wind turbines. So reducing CO2, not creating it. So if we now look at other areas, for example, packaging, in particular, I wanted to look at carbon negative plastics. So it's the ability for technology that captures greenhouse gases and turns that into plastic, as opposed to using plastics made from fossil fuels. So it's actually a carbon negative plastic. But even in your industry, sustainability is now a key driving force, and you know, consumers are demanding businesses to be more sustainable. So why IoT? Why digitisation? Our favourite saying in the business is, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So a really simple example of this is in our old business centre, we had the old storage heaters. Now, we had no idea when these storage heaters came on. So what we did is we put a sensor on it, similar to this, literally plug and play, monitors temperature and vibration, and goes into a cloud environment. Now, over a 2-week period, we got some historical data. And what we found is that the storage heaters were coming on 3 hours in advance of what they were supposed to be. And they were getting to the hottest temperature in the middle of the night when nobody was in the building. So we took that data down to the business centre and we shared that with them, to which they said, you don't actually pay for your energy. So for us, it wasn't an impactful finding, but what they wanted was the data. They wanted those insights because they actually had 200 storage heaters. So to them, that was some really powerful data. So what they did with that, to trial the savings, they put all their storage heaters back by 1 hour. To trial the savings, that's 200 storage heaters per day saving 1 hour. And an energy consultant reckoned that we'd save them approximately £10,000 per year and about 32 tonnes of annual CO2 emissions. So for us, it was about the power of now. We talk about getting real-time data now. What data can you get on your production? What data can you get on your people? What data can you get on your assets and your products to make more impactful, more insightful decisions and to get better outcomes? So Danielle, if we could please move on to the next slide. So we wanted to just cover a couple of the projects that we're working on at the moment. So the first one, modern methods of construction. So we've been working quite heavily with the Liverpool City region on this. So we have a patent pending innovation called MIDS. So this is our material and insulation detection system. So we've got an innovation. So it's about embedding sensors into insulation to give it a digital identity. So that's to make sure that the correct insulation is going into your ceilings and into your walls and into your buildings to reduce those energy bills, to make sure that people are actually getting insulation, that it's keeping them safe, and most importantly, protecting those that are most vulnerable. So, not sure if you know, but 2.5 million homes across England live in fuel poverty. They estimate about 3,000 people die every single year because of poorly heated homes. And with what happened, the tragedies with Grenfell, 70% of high-rise buildings still do not have identified cladding on them. In Runcorn, so very close to us, there are flats that have seen their insurance bills soar by 600%. So they're now in negative equity. Their houses the flats used to sell for 140,000, and now they're selling for 60,000 because it's been identified as having flammable cladding. So what we can do is actually use our material system to actually give that a digital identity. Moving on to the next one, so restoring confidence in workplaces. So the government advice at the moment for workplaces and businesses is to open the window to protect yourself from COVID-19. Now, what impact is this going to have on heating bills? How much heat are we actually going to lose in our buildings because of poor air quality? So we're working with a smart ventilation company that purifies the air, and they're killing is 99.6% of bacteria. So our role in that is to help them look at the control system, help them look at sensors, help them look at the software and different lines of revenue. So actually being able to provide their service to asthma sufferers to tell them that the air is clean in that office environment. The next one I put on there is about ensuring supply chain authenticity. Now, Darren covered this quite nicely from CPI. So I'm not sure if you know, but 25% of all alcohol, pharmaceutical products and aerospace parts are renowned for being counterfeit. So as you rightly said, technology can prove this authenticity and that user journey. So using technologies, so NFC, RFID or printed electrodes to actually prove that that product is genuine. And then the last one that I put on there is something I'm passionate about. I've recently gone for a Women in Innovation Award for building a low-cost tracker. So the ability to know where your goods are in real time and actually track that product throughout its life cycle. So as Darren also rightly said about COVID samples, being able to track those throughout its lifetime. Well, we want to be able to do that with a low-cost tracker for other industries. So, for example, for food industry, being able to track it from point to point. There's 1.3 billion tonnes of food that is lost or wasted annually due to unsuitable food storage. So what can technology do to provide better insights, better data to keep our food at the correct temperature? Daniel, could you please go to the next slide? So how do we do this? We have a professional services methodology called Empower. Now, I hope this shows that we're quite a fun company to work with. If you can see, it is supposed to be a little representation of Derek, but it's a man in a boat. So the man, he doesn't know, is he in the right location to get that fish? Has he got the right rod? Has he got the right bait? Our Empower process is a three-phase approach. It's taking you through the possible, workable and rapid prototype. So it's taking you from that, the start of your journey right to the end, to where you can see the man, he's got loads of fish. So he's got the right bait. We've shown him he's in the right location and he's got the right rod. So we'll make you get there quicker, faster. We'll show you a quicker return on investment. We'll show you the business case. Digital transformation is daunting for a lot of companies. We won't deny it. So that's our job, is to help you get there quicker and have fun along the way. So it's all about the art of the possible. So I'm going to pass over, Daniel, go to the next slide. Derek's going to tackle this one.
Yeah, so when we start looking at digital transformation, we identify three types of companies. Firstly, we have those companies that are currently firefighting with digital. You know, they're looking at trying to work out what Zoom and Teams is all about, and they're probably looking at how they cope with remote monitoring. And they're also looking at things like Office 365. We'll have some companies a little bit more advanced, and whenever you start off in life, you learn to walk. So we call this the digital walk, and typically it's looking inside the four walls of your organization. And then when you've mastered walking, you then learn to run. And that's where you can look at accelerating your growth. So if I was to split, if I start off a little bit with the digital walk, a couple of areas that we see in that sort of area, companies that are starting to try and improve productivity. Productivity is massive. You know, current growth of productivity is 2.5% in some sectors, and we need to improve. We know we need to become more competitive. So a couple of areas that we look at in that sort of space are things like MES, or manufacturing execution systems. And that's where we start to look at your jobs in real time. So if you've got a production line, how long is each individual job taking? And how do we get that data back into a system in real time? Not historical data, in real time, so you can make better decisions. I've been in sales for a long time. I think of that poor salesman now working from home who hasn't got access to what's happening on the job floor, and his customer is asking him where his job is. You know, these types of systems can help with that. And also, once you start to get that data from the MES system, what else can it tell you? You know, what are your pattern shifts look like? Where are your training requirements? And once you know where the shortfalls are in your production line, that might help you on other parts of your industry for journeys, such as, for instance, robotics. You know, if something's a little bit slower, I've got it, but you need to start somewhere. And Neve says we need to capture that data. The other element of what we also look at is perhaps your machines. You know, helping us to track our machines. A lot of manufacturers are, you know, will have fantastic sort of, you know, service engineers coming in, maintaining their machines, keeping them up to date. But now companies are saying, well, actually, how can I monitor my machines in real time? How do I start to work out better planned maintenance? And how do I create the service? And that can be quite daunting, because some SMEs that we work with are not sensor specialists. They're not IT security specialists. They're not software specialists. And this is our job, really, is to show them the art of the possible. So, you know, Neve mentioned this sensor. You know, this is a sensor that measures temperature and vibration, and it works with a very simple gateway that you plug into a wall socket. So again, those technologies are available. When we start moving towards the digital run side of it, this is where you start to look at potential returns of 15 to 1, and you know the risks are a lot higher. In those sorts of spaces, people like Rolls-Royce have been doing that for a long time, with, you know, charging their engines per hour, and you know, Cisco recently have come on announcing that they're going to be selling their hardware as a service. We've been working with 2 clients. We've been working with a pump company recently, looking at how they can put a sensor into their pump and connect it. And the potential lines of revenue of that was, you know, over £1 million. Is it worth doing? But I'd say so. The second one we looked at was a business case of a certain tote moving around, and looking at the potential savings there. And we estimate, you know, £15 million savings on that as well. So going back to the most important thing with all this, you know, right at the bottom of the slide is culture. You know, sometimes you do need that system. And it's great that we're going to have the catapults, you know, in the DMA and the MTC and the growth company and Unilever's packaging. I find theirs to be fantastic. There's lots of really good companies. So over on that note, I shall hand back over to Neve to finish off.
So just next slide, please, Danielle, the last one. If we're on time, hopefully. So as we say, we're based in Cytec Daresbury. We're a collaborative organisation. We recently just submitted a bid with the Liverpool City region. We had 14 companies from LCR. So we believe that working together gets results. So we're really excited to be part of the Cytec Daresbury community. We're working with the Liverpool Growth Company and the MTC, to name but a few. But our mission is to join up the dots. So if you do have any questions, our details are there. We're happy to have a conversation. But thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and we look forward to hearing from everybody else.
Fantastic, Neve. Fantastic, Derek. You only slightly went over, which is absolutely fantastic. So superb. So I think so. Anybody out there, any questions for Colin, Darren, Neve, or Derek? You know, please just put them into the into the chat. I think what's just while people maybe wanted to put something in, I just think what comes across for me really strongly from those 3 presentations is the huge opportunity for digital in this circular economy space. Niamh talked about cladding on buildings. Colin talked about the design, and then the whole entire process of manufacture of bottles, and materials and FMCG goods. And then Darren looked, I think one of the things that I'd like DIT colleagues and post overseas to really take away from this presentation is the articulation of the size of the opportunity that Darren showed from a CPI perspective. All aspects of the value chain in packaging, from the actual product itself to the delivery to the ability to make it smart. So I think that there's just massive opportunity there. Niamh, Derek, Colin and Darren really articulated that digital transformation will drive that entire process. And I think that from my point of view, that's the sort of takeaway from this part of the session. But Colin, I just wanted to ask you, because we've got you, and it's very rare that we have you because you're a very busy individual. I just wanted to sort of, if I may, just ask you just to finish off from a Unilever perspective on you have some very ambitious targets that you articulated in one of your very first slides. Taking it as a snapshot here as we are in 2020, where are you against those? Where are you against those objectives? And potentially, is there additional help out there? I know Howard from ABB has mentioned in the chat, but is there additional help or resource or expertise out there in the wider world that you as Unilever would look to engage with?
Yeah, no, I think Simon, absolutely right. I mean, this type of set of commitments, if I focus particularly on those plastic commitments for a moment, are not the sort of things that you can do in isolation. We can make a lot of progress in a lot of areas, but we do that by working absolutely collaboratively with people with different expertise and helping to bring people together in order to help us to make progress on those agendas. We're making very good progress against those different commitments that I mentioned. And actually, just a couple of weeks ago, we issued a sort of a 1 year on from our initial commitment, which was September, October last year. We started out on the journey formally, and actually just a couple of weeks ago we issued some sort of status in terms of where are we, sort of thing. So things are moving forward very well. We're already at we've got a 25% recycled plastic commitment, and we're already 1 year on. We're at about 10% already inclusion across our global plastic footprint. And we're already taking out quite a lot of plastic from some of our systems by moving them into new materials. It continues to be an ongoing process, and there are certainly plenty of challenge territories from a technical perspective. So we're very keen to to connect with people out there who have ideas in terms of material solutions, who have ideas around the ways in which digital can support this whole program, and more generally, frankly, Unilever wants to transform the way it does its R&D operations, and more generally across what we do across a lot of different areas, using digital techniques of a number of different forms. We are absolutely keen to to understand and to connect with people who have areas there that can be relevant for us. And I sit within our R&D organisation, so very much interested in that sort of in the development of new products and how we use digital tools to support the optimization of those different processes.
Fantastic. Thanks, Colin. Derek, you've got your hand up there, literally and metaphorically.
Simon, I hope you don't mind, but I have to inject it. We did some work last year with a client in New York on payments and how we could embed payments, contactless payments, into jewelry. And we've seen some evidence now that we could put the equivalent of contactless pay into packaging. It would cost to have done that in one of their coffee cups. The ring on my finger is a contactless payment card, and I make that with our payment. In the region, we have some really good contacts in terms of that closed loop circular economy. And for our international visitors, this is the Namibian social payment card that we still look after, and this has their biometric on a contactless card. So the abilities for us to be able to embed those technologies and make that full circular thing, your bottle could physically make a payment, your bottle could be used to get some money back for repurposing. So when you start to look at embedding sensors, there's just so much potential out there.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I would agree with you, Derek. Absolutely. I think there's a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of technology development, as you rightly say, in this whole territory of connected packaging, smart packaging.
Absolutely.
So many different areas which now allow you to have a much more direct connectivity with a consumer in a two-way sort of process, and in a one-way sense, even just being able to help a consumer to be able to scan a pack, whether it's simple as a QR code or augmented reality solutions or whatever it is, which then just takes you to somewhere where you've got recipe information, you've got more information about the provenance of the materials in the product, and so on and so on. There are lots of areas that we're very active in, indeed, to support that better communication, and I think that it's just the beginning of that journey. There's a lot of opportunity beyond that.
Great stuff. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. We have one question very quickly. I promised my colleague Hannah that I would finish on time for my section. Very quick question for Colin. How does Unilever look at e-commerce from a circular point of view? I suppose this is the question from Frederick. I suppose repackaging activities with the usage of packaging and plastic materials must be a focus area as well. Yep.
No, indeed, Frederick, you're absolutely right. It's e-commerce. For all businesses is absolutely booming at the moment, of course, because of the circumstances that everybody finds themselves in, and certainly we're no different in that respect. People are definitely increasingly looking to buy the type of products that we offer through those types of, whether it's a pure play e-commerce type of proposal or through omni-channel options and so on. It is an area which is very much in focus for us, because, as you rightly say in your question, if you don't do anything, the reality is that what I produce out of my factory, which might work very well for a traditional bricks and mortar type of retailer, frankly, is not very well suited to send through an e-commerce type of channel. And indeed, you end up with lots of repacking and rehandling processes along the way, which can and does increase the amount of material that's used, unless you are quite carefully thinking about how you design your products to accommodate those types of different handling systems. And just to use the Amazon examples, although there are many different ones, but they've defined some criteria like what they call SIOC, so ship in own container, and FFP, sort of frustration-free packaging, both of which are examples of where, and we work closely with Amazon on some of these solutions, but they're indicative of a more general sense, which is the thought of actually designing at the beginning with the needs of e-commerce at the forefront of your mind, alongside then the consumer needs and the manufacturing needs and all of the other distribution requirements that one has. And when you do that, you can design solutions which are fit for purpose, which don't require extra material. In fact, often you can save material and don't require repacking through the process. But the critical point at the beginning is to start with that thought in mind and not try and retrofit it later, because inevitably you end up using more material than you would otherwise.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Colin. Right. Once again, Darren, Colin, Niamh, Derek, thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure people listening to it would have seen, loads of opportunity in that. But I did promise my colleague Hannah that I would not run over, and I have singularly failed to do that because I've run over by 3 minutes. I do apologise. So, Darren, Niamh, Derek, Colin, Darren, thank you for that. We'll wrap up at the end, but I'm now moving on to my colleague Hannah's section, which is opportunities for digitisation, pharmaceutical manufacturing and medtech, which is extremely topical at the moment, as you'll all know. So Hannah, my sincerest apologies for running over, and please take it away.
No problem. Thanks, Simon. There've been obviously some great speakers and some great presentations, but now we move to the second part. of the presentation, which is very focused around the life sciences sector that sits within the city region. Incredibly topical, as we know, with COVID-19 and vaccine developments and research that are ongoing at the moment. And this next part of the session is very much going to focus around the opportunities for digital that sit within that space, and give some real life examples of the ecosystem that sits within the city region, and then some businesses that are part of that ecosystem that are innovating around that space as well. So we'll have an overview of the sector that will come first. And then we'll move into two smaller businesses that sit within the city region to talk through some of their pieces. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to our first speaker, Peter Timmins, who's chair of the Health and Life Sciences Board, and he will give an overview of the infectious disease space that sits within Liverpool City region.
Thanks, Hannah. Danielle, next slide, please. So that just repeats what you've just heard from Hannah. That's me, pharmaceutical consultant working with the city region through the Health and Life Sciences Board. So next slide, please. As Hannah mentioned, there is a very mature ecosystem across health and life sciences within the city region, not just mature, but dynamic, evolving and growing. The northwest of England is one of the top 3 regions for life sciences employment. We have a very powerful life sciences community across the city region, with a very strong presence of pharmaceutical manufacturing, pharmaceutical research, biotech and medtech. A total of 114,000 jobs across 3,750 businesses, with 2,250 people, most recent measure, people employed in pharmaceutical manufacturing. Feeding into that ecosystem of really moving businesses, moving forward businesses and locations here, we have a very effective training and development space running within the city region, with 27,000 students enrolled in health-related degrees. Being very forward-looking, the city region has become home to the UK's first university technical college, which specialises in life sciences training and education for 14 to 19-year-olds and getting them into further education beyond that. And just recognising the theme of our discussions today, the city region is actually the home to the United Kingdom's first ever dedicated digital academy based at the City of Liverpool College. Next slide, please. So to provide a foundation for that very dynamic and growing ecosystem, there are 3 elements I need to describe to you. Some basic assets, like the Liverpool Knowledge Quarter, very much represented in the Paddington Village development that's growing and developing still. Central City, the Accelerator building associated with the University of Liverpool, and the Liverpool Science Park right within the city. We've already heard from a very successful business at Cytec Daresbury, which is another of our assets. We have a Hartree Centre represented here in the city region, with supercomputing capability to support businesses who want to do modelling and simulation, for example, and a number of assets associated with the universities, spin-offs from the universities and businesses connected to the universities. And I have to mention there are 3 key institutions within the city region: the School of Tropical Medicine, the University of Liverpool and Liverpool John Moores University, and helping this network connect and function and operate with key organisations across the city region: the Innovation Agency that connects industry to the NHS, Liverpool Health Partners connecting academia to the NHS. We have the Centre of Excellence for Infectious Disease Research, evolved out of the School of Tropical Medicine, which connects academia industry very much in the area of innovation in infectious disease research, discovery, research, development, proof and manufacturing. And then the health tech cluster, the e-tech cluster, and the manufacturing technology centre, which I'm going to come on to later. Next slide, please. I have to reinforce that the city region is really well represented in pharmaceutical companies, biotech, medtech companies, diagnostics companies. Our key industries include major international, in fact, truly global players like AstraZeneca, Seqirus, major vaccines manufacturer, Elanco in animal health, companies engaged in R&D within the region like Bristol Myers Squibb and Allergan, now part of AbbVie, and other manufacturers in the healthcare, personal care and pharmaceuticals like Teva, Unilever, Nutricia, Vitaflo, Fresenius Kabi and Thermo Fisher. It's not just those companies alone that form part of the pharma, medtech, biotech and diagnostic space. There's an enormously effective supply chain already operating right across the city region. And you can see on the slide the different areas they represent. This has all grown up and matured and continues to develop within the city region due to a very long history of health and life sciences and pharma businesses across the city region, possibly fueled by the Port of Liverpool's history, the establishment of the School of Tropical Medicine as a consequence, and the growth in that institution in looking at infectious disease. Again, in the 20th century, the first large-scale fermentation of penicillin was done on Speke Boulevard by a company there, and that's become a big focus within the city region for our pharma, medtech, biotech, and diagnostic companies. So next one, please. Let me tell you a little bit more about that on the next slide. This next slide. The School of Tropical Medicine I've mentioned is a very successful agency in garnering research funding to support its mission in understanding better infectious diseases of all kinds, not just tropical diseases, but diseases of all kinds. And tropical diseases obviously were a trigger, but we see diseases spread rapidly around the world, which may start in other countries and become pandemics, and we're all very familiar with that. And the School of Tropical Medicine has a major role in that. It's been very successful in achieving significant government funding around Strength in Places to build a new project to look for integrated therapeutic solutions for human infectious disease using materials innovation, artificial intelligence, machine learning and digital and sensor technology all integrated into this to create perhaps the next generation of infectious disease therapies. And it's drawing in additional funding and there's further opportunity for partnership there. So next slide, Daniel. I want to talk to you about the Digital Manufacturing Centre. We've already heard of Manufacturing Technology Centre, which is working with the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority to help develop a digital manufacturing centre, a £15 million programme which provides access to modular and flexible test beds. We've heard about developing digital twins to model processes, and this is particularly true in pharma, biotech and medtech space. And so this is a very powerful potential future way of companies digitizing their processes, understanding them better, making tweaks in silico rather than having to build facility and test it before you go and get your optimum facility, go and build it and use it. And the DMA is already working with Seqirus Vaccines to look at their processes and help improve their processes at the Speke site, and with good connections into the supply chain locally as well. So next slide, please. You know, we can't talk anything pharma and life sciences and healthcare without talking about viruses today. And the city region has been very engaged in building up capability in the discovery, development, proving, and being able to manufacture new vaccines, new antiviral therapeutics, and diagnostic solutions associated with those. again, a lot of it founded out of the capabilities within the universities, in the University of Liverpool, John Moores University, and of course the School of Tropical Medicine, where we have one of the largest concentrations of category 3 laboratories in the UK for handling live viruses, including COVID-19 and Ebola, can be handled safely there to help us do that new therapeutic discovery through preclinical research, capability within the city region to undertake phase 1 and 2 trials. We have a lot of manufacturing experience across the city region that new companies coming in could engage with and learn how to put their businesses in, and expertise in being able to do quality control. And I've already mentioned our supply chain and distribution capability in the city region. So next slide, please. So we have 3 well-established campuses already that businesses could come into and grow and develop. The Heath at Runcorn, a very well-established business and technical park, already 120 companies there from 20 different businesses, and space to grow and develop. We have mentioned a couple of times already Cytec Daresbury, again, very well located to connect to Liverpool, but also in the heart of the northwest, being able to connect to Warrington, Runcorn and Manchester as well, all of which are a short distance away. Already 150 technology and health tech companies located there, and again, space to grow and develop there. And we've mentioned the Knowledge Quarter. Knowledge Quarters is one of those foundation assets that's providing capability through its platforms of connectivity into the academic centres right within the city itself. And the major asset growing and developing there is Paddington Village, which will provide the opportunity for an additional 1.8 million square feet of space for science, technology, education and health for businesses coming into the city region. Next slide, please. I mentioned already the pharma, biotech, medtech strength. Liverpool has one of the biggest biomanufacturing clusters in Europe. The benefits that cluster can draw on are the universities, college and schools within the city region, good enablement for planning permission if you want to come here, grow and develop. There are soft landing platforms to provide funding for people coming in. Local funding and regional investment opportunities such as a single investment fund, all of which you can find out by connecting to one of the connection points I'll share with you at the end of this presentation. And remember, I've already mentioned, there is already within the ecosystem a very strong local and global supply chain, and we have 2 international airports right on our doorstep. Next slide, please. So there are opportunities for digital, and we're going to hear from those from the next set of speakers. But again, any of those funding opportunities to make coming here easier, please do connect with investliverpool.com and they can help you there. So thank you. I will stop there.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks. So that is a very whistle-stop tour of the ecosystem that sits within the infectious disease space within the city region. And now we'll move on to some of the businesses that actually are part of that ecosystem. So if I hand over to Cliff now from NeedleSmart.
Thanks, Hannah. Hi guys, NeedleSmart is a medtech business based in the Liverpool city region and supported by both of the universities and the medtech cluster around us. Next slide, please. Today I'm going to talk to you about, let's be honest, the biggest discussion point at the moment, which is mass vaccination and how it can be done, and perhaps how NeedleSmart can ably assist with that process. Next slide, please. So a little bit about NeedleSmart as a business. It's not a startup medtech that has spun out of the COVID pandemic. It's an established business that launched its first products to market in late 2019. Through Medica in Dusseldorf. It has product in FDA approval at the moment. However, COVID-19 has brought to bear an opportunity, perhaps unique for NeedleSmart where we can really add some value to the oncoming mass vaccination campaign. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit about the business. As you can see, it's not a journey that starts in 2020. The original concept was built out in 2008. I'm an engineer by profession, and the nuts and bolts that sit inside the original product or the core of the product today was indeed my original design, and the team now own and manage the development of that. As you can see, we have product in FDA, and we are on the emergency supply list internationally in areas such as Dubai. Next slide, please. So, DVS. Either or, Hannah. Thank you. DVS is a system that helps strategically manage and deploy a mass vaccination campaign by offering maximum value to both the patient, the healthcare professional, and the system that is operating the vaccination. Next slide, please. So what are we doing really? We know there are 4 big questions that need answering. The first one is who administered the vaccine, second being who was vaccinated, and the third being which vaccine did they receive, and finally, where were they vaccinated? Now, of course, in today's market, all of that information can be gathered, but it is a predominantly manual process with quite a lot of human input. And we are about to undertake the largest mass vaccination campaign in history, and it's a relatively safe assumption that most of those protocols will be overwhelmed in the process. Next slide, please. A little bit about our technology. So the product itself, it's a medtech device by design. It takes a standard hypodermic needle or a safety device if required. You place it within the technology. It heats the needle to 1300 degrees in less than half a second, and at the point where it is just about to melt, the system detects it and it squashes the metal into a very small sphere at the end of the plastic lure. That does a number of things. It's no longer a sharp, so it's no longer a puncture risk and a post-procedural needle stick injury. It reduces the sharps disposal burden and the oncoming sharps disposal costs. It eliminates the virus and bacteria that is on the needle due to the process that's been undertaken, and it allows for forward processing of data, which happens as the needle is destroyed. Next slide, please. So talking about our digital vaccination system, we have a system that we've evolved that starts with an app that has 2 component levels to it, really. It has a patient-facing component level, which is something you'll probably all be familiar with, an airline boarding app, where you become a QR code as you enter an airport, and then the administration side of the app, which allows the healthcare professional themselves to grab the data from the onboarding process, and then behind that, a full architecture of how you manage and deploy the vaccination program. So everything from the HQ level information right the way down to managing the vaccination sessions. And the manner in which we bring this forward is we are not a health records provider. We are a complementary system to support health records providers. And the information that we take from an individual is name, address, date of birth, and a reference number. So perhaps that's an NHS number or an insurance number. On the vaccine side, we scan the vaccine, so we are able to say what vaccine it is, who manufactured it, the expiry date, and the batch number, and we bring those together centrally within our system. That happens as the patient is brought into the vaccine session, and then the vaccine is carried out in a standard way. There is no special equipment required. At the moment, when the needle is then destroyed with NeedleSmart's technology, the data is pushed into a cloud, which does 2 things. It sends the patient record to a centralized location or onward to a record provider, and it sends the supply chain data to a centralized location for further processing and effectively just-in-time supply. Next slide, please, Hannah. This is a demonstration of the process, and I've hopefully spoken through it, so I won't dwell on this slide. The patient arrives in their vaccination centre. The admin side of the NeedleSmart app onboards them to the system. The system then scans the vaccine's carried out. needle is destroyed, data is transmitted. Now, in one sentence, what I've hopefully described is a mechanism that removes almost all of the paper burden administration that's an inevitable consequence of managing a campaign such as this. Our uptake, because of that efficiency and improvement, has been significant so far. Obviously, timing of it is critical. Next slide, please. So, trying to sum up the benefits that we believe we bring, talking to a wide set of healthcare professionals who lead, manage and run vaccination campaigns, there is a general consensus that at least 50% of their time is on administration, be that onboarding the individual to the vaccine, doing the vaccination checklists, etc., or indeed after the event, making sure that all the data has been gathered correctly. And that doesn't include, of course, post-administration outside of the vaccination room. We know that as a minimum, our process will remove 50% of that time burden. We are data agnostic, so we are not tethered or wed to any particular data provider. Therefore, we can gather the data and we can push it into a central location, and whoever requires it can have access to that data. We are not laying claim to it in any way. We are here to help. We have a booking system that sits right behind the architecture, which allows the vaccination provider to go all the way down to the actual vaccination session and manage and book in a COVID-safe manner how people are brought in to carry out their vaccinations. The interesting thing that we bring uniquely to the process alongside disposing of the needle is that we can create a unique DigiKey on each vaccine record, which is a serialized event that only the NeedleSmart system can see, and that is sat embedded in the back of the data record. It cannot be replicated and it cannot be duplicated. On the physical aspect of what we bring, we have the ability to create a just-in-time supply chain. So one of the things that I guess is going to become paramount in this is making sure that there are enough people available to carry out the vaccines, and then that they have enough equipment to administer the vaccines. We have a system here that will allow automated resupply to happen. And then the final point is that somewhere in the process, people will need to be paid for the administration of the vaccines. We have an automated system built within the architecture of the technology, which allows this to be brought forward to any sort of invoicing platform. Next slide, please, Hannah. Summarizing what we're really doing is NeedleSmart is a technology that is destroying a hypodermic needle, creating a safer working environment post-procedure. But in real terms, we use the disposal of the needle as a moment of capturing a data act, a compliance event, if you will. So we are using the destroying of the needle as the compliance event to transfer the physical interaction into the world of the digital. We answer the big four questions, which I described earlier. We move the record into a centralized database. Probably an important point to note that if there is to be some sort of e-passport for health, then having agnostic virgin data gathered as close to the point of vaccination as possible clearly has some benefits. We have a total sharp safe protocol, so post-event, once you've used the NeedleSmart technology, there is no longer a sharp in the room, and a direct result of that is a reduction in needle stick injuries and a 50% reduction in the sharp's waste burden as a result of using NeedleSmart and our DVS technology. Next slide, please, Hannah. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Cliff. I think in the interest of time, because we're running over a tiny bit, we'll just move straight into Neil's presentation from Factory Talk. And as always, if there's any questions, pop them in the chat. And if we can't answer over the webinar, then we'll make sure that we retrospectively get in touch to support. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Neil.
Thanks very much, Hannah. So hi, everybody. I'm Neil from Factory Talk. And I want to talk to you today about why EBR in the cloud could be the answer to digitizing manufacturing challenges and deliver big compliance and efficiency benefits. So let's first look at what EBR, or electronic batch recording, is and what it does. Next slide, please. Sorry, next one. So an EBR tool replaces the batch record by digitally creating the process instructions and recording the execution data, which allows you to review and approve the batch online. So let's look at how you benefit from that. Next slide, please. So removing paper is an obvious benefit, but you also get improvements in data integrity, error proofing and cycle time reductions. By executing and recording the data with the electronic tool, the data is readily available during and after manufacturing. And let's now look at one of those benefits in a bit more detail. That's cycle time improvement. Next slide, please. This is an assessment of cycle time reduction that we did with a client. We reviewed their paper process document and they measured the time they spent on plant on each activity. And then we assessed the two by comparison. In both cases, we found that nearly 50% of the time spent in manufacturing was on non-value added activities. So let's look at that in a bit more detail. Next slide, please. So we converted their paper process to an electronic batch record, and then we analysed those two. And when we assessed the batch record alongside the one we produced using the EBR tool, we predicted that they would get these improvements. We estimated that the manual entries would go down by about 50%. And you can see some of the other changes that were introduced as a result of using an EBR tool in these graphs, the reductions in calculations and in signatures, etc. Next slide, please. So in practice, these were the results that we got when we ran the paper batch record alongside the EBR tool. You can see that the number of confirmations went up. This is because some manual entries were converted to a simple yes/no confirmation of an automated instruction. And in all other cases, the manual entries went down. For example, in a paper batch record, it's common for the operators to perform calculations and record the answers in the batch record. Using an EBR tool, this is fully automated. Date and timestamps and signatures are similarly automated. Next slide, please. So when we ran those two together, the result was a nearly 55% reduction in manual entries. And of course, fewer manual entries mean a lower risk of human error. And this is one reason for the improvement in data integrity that can be achieved by using an EBR tool. So that's enough about the product and the benefits that you get from using EBR. I want to turn our attention now to cloud and look a little bit at what the benefits of using a tool like this, but in the cloud are. Could we have the next slide, please? Unfortunately, despite our desire to move up the Industry 4.0 adoption curve, few pharma companies have actually progressed very far yet. Even the large multinationals have only managed to get EBR into their top tier manufacturing sites. Their smaller sites just don't have it. Clearly, the Industry 4.0 drivers have not been enough to overcome the resistance to that investment. And we believe that to improve the situation, we need to democratize EBR to enable it to be implemented in all sites. And for this, we need fast cloud solutions. Next slide, please. So what else might be stopping the companies investing? Well, there are many possible reasons. Some of them are listed here: costs, GMP, computer systems validation, complexity, time and effort, or maybe everything. Let's look just at the cost challenge on the next slide, please. On this slide, we can see that the cloud subscription fee at 68% typically is a relatively large proportion of the overall fee when compared with an on-premise or traditional solution. However, there are many hidden costs that appear below the waterline in a traditional solution, which a pharma company has to take care of themselves, as opposed to in the cloud solution where your cloud service provider does all of that for you. When taking all the costs into account, a traditional solution could be up to 10 times more expensive to operate. Another concern that we looked at in pharma manufacturing is compliance. So if we take the next slide, A commonly asked question is posed here. Can you validate a public cloud solution, the cheapest version of cloud provision? Our answer is yes. However, it's made simpler if the solution is designed for cloud and takes full advantage of the cloud service provider's compliance offering. In this case, where we're using Microsoft's Azure platform, you get a world-class data center support, which allows you to fully leverage the service provider and their investment in compliance and security tools. And this enables you to meet the GAMP5 principles, which are the guide to computer systems validation best practices. And I want to look now and finish up really looking at a couple of case studies of using public cloud EBR solutions. If you could have the next slide, please, Hannah. This was our launch customer for our Batchline EBR product. It was a small Asian pharma company. They wanted to improve cycle time and in particular reduce the batch review time. And you can see the question they brought to us. You know, we can't release fast enough to meet our demand, and we're taking too much time to review batches. They achieve this, but also those other benefits that I list on this slide of data integrity, etc. And then my final case study, if you move to the next slide, please, Hannah. This is a recent study, and my apologies for the phone ringing. It's a recent study, a recent case study that we've completed. And again, another Asian cosmetics and pharma company. We're up and running with EBR in 2 weeks, and we did this in the middle of the initial COVID lockdown. I think you can safely be assured that you could only do that working completely remotely using a cloud EBR tool, and of course things like Zoom and Teams that we use to collaborate over. So that's it really. If we move to the final slide, I'll just give my summary of why EBR in the cloud is the direction we should be moving in. We think that EBR cloud solutions enable all manufacturers to digitize their production and gain the benefits that currently only the largest pharma companies enjoy. And maybe I should leave you with this thought, a message really. If it's on paper, it's not data. And we can only gather the benefits of data from our production if we get that into a system and take advantage of it. So thank you for listening today. I'm happy to take any questions during the Q&A session. Over to you, Hannah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Neil. Obviously, we're running very close to time, so there's no questions that have been posted so far in the chat. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank our speakers for the second half, so Peter, Cliff and Neil, and hopefully that's given you an opportunity to see the scope and opportunities that exist within digitisation in the sector. I'm going to pass over to Simon, who's going to obviously summarise and close up the event.
Thanks, Hannah, and thanks, Neil, thanks, Cliff, thanks, Peter. Fantastic presentations yet again. I've got some final thoughts, but I'd just like to just hand back to Nigel just for a second, just to kind of sort of sum up from a Department of International Trade point of view before I do the final sort of closing. So Nigel, a few words from you, if I may ask you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Simon. And thank you everybody else for taking part in today, whether you've presented, whether you've been listening in and asking questions and following up afterwards. So yeah, some of the key takeaways for me was when we began this, we were trying to paint the picture about the opportunities that were here, particularly from the digital side of things. We've heard a lot about how businesses here are helping people to be more effective and efficient in terms of how they're adapting and utilising technology and digital tools. We spoke about optimised solutions and clearly some world-class solutions here, which you may not have previously been aware of across the Liverpool City region. We've made reference specifically to things like modelling and simulation. We've heard about cloud and IoT, and then some specific places, some specific assets here, some world-class assets in the form of the likes of Cytec Daresbury. We've heard about the Hartree Centre, the high-performance computing that's there. For investors, whether you're one yourself or a DIT colleague. There's a soft landing program for businesses that want to actually land within that as well, which is a great asset to be had. We've heard about the Knowledge Quarter, we've heard about Centre City, the Science Park, Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, the Heath, and so on. So there's a whole host of opportunities there, and the companies hopefully that all spoke today from different types of experiences from the digital spectrum have hopefully painted a good picture in terms of how we are operating currently, how we're looking to move further forward, and this was about a future look. So I'm really delighted as to how it's come together. So from my side, that ticked the boxes. I'm obviously happy to help with any follow-ups, but Simon, conscious of time, we'll try and finish reasonably on time. Just back to you to do some final summaries. So from me, thank you, everybody.
Great, thanks, Nigel, and thanks for your support. I'd also like to thank, just very briefly, my growth platform colleagues, specifically Sylvia, Kate, Alice, and Hannah, and Danielle, last but not least, who's been driving all of the tech for us. So I'd like to thank all you guys. You've been absolutely fantastic. But just one final sort of thought from me. We're dead on time, so I'm not going to take too much of your time. I think when people think about Industry 4.0, there's a lot of talk and there's a lot of positioning and hype. Hopefully, what we've got over to today, that in that circular economy piece and in the med tech and vaccine manufacturing piece, there is a real willingness to embrace digital solutions. I mean, you know, who would have thought that, you know, the simple act of putting a needle in someone's arm could be, you know, it could be a cloud computing platform, you know, with all the benefits of the NHS. Who would have thought that the humble Lynx spray that we see on our supermarket shelves are a huge, you know, have a huge appetite for bringing through digital solutions right from design concept stage right through manufacturing to the point where it gets to our front door, whether it by Amazon or any other carrier, DPD, Royal Mail, doesn't matter who. So I think for people watching this morning or maybe listening to this later, the Liverpool City region, you know, we've put a lot of thought over the last 5 years into this. There's loads of opportunity, there's loads of assets, there's loads of businesses willing to work with you. So please, the last bit from me, there's mine and Hannah's phone numbers there. There's Nigel's phone number on the screen. We'll circulate these slides to attendees afterwards as well. If you've got any further questions, please contact us. A lot of what we've talked about today is content on the Invest Liverpool website. The two topic themes from today's webinar have specific pages on the site, and will include some of the companies that you've heard from today. So please have a look around there. There's plenty of detail. There's the ability to get in touch. And finally, I just want to thank all of our speakers. I'd like to thank Nigel and his team from DIT for assisting us on this. I'd like to thank my Invest Liverpool colleagues who've done a great job in terms of promotion and media, my growth platform colleagues, but most of all you, for tuning in and listening, and allowing us to you know, impart to you the exciting opportunities here in the Liverpool City region. So that's it from me. We're 2 minutes over, which isn't bad with that many speakers that we've had. Many thanks everybody for attending, and I hope you've got something out of it, and please follow up on anything you'd like to know. Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.